didn't know I was going to get emotional. I didn't want to get emotional. Can you admit I touch you? What's up, guys? This is Royce and Bekah. That's Royce. I'm Bekah.
Just in case you couldn't figure that out by the names themselves, I guess maybe not though.
And if you're new here, yes, it's Rolls Royce. That's his real name. And my real name is Bekah, like Rebecca, but shortened. We are here to celebrate families and marriages and encourage everyone along the way because this life can be difficult. But if we're together, we'll make it through.
Yes, we will. Today we want to ask the question, does culture affect marriage? When you initially hear the word culture, you might think of different countries, like the United States and Ecuador, or the United Kingdom and India. When you have two people that are married from those cultures that are so markedly different, it's really easy to say, yeah, obviously that affects your marriage. But the point that we want to make today is that everyone has their own culture. Everyone has their own come from. And it's really important to understand that about yourself and to understand what it brings to your marriage.
We wanted to give you a little bit of insight into our culture and our come from, and maybe that'll help you discover yours. How has my culture defined me? What have I brought into our marriage? And I think kind of knowing your culture, you kind of have to know where you came from. I don't really feel like there's anything special about my upbringing. It felt pretty normal to me. I grew up in a small town in Sarasota, Florida. My parents didn't really make a lot of money, so we didn't really have a lot. I also grew up in the same church my entire life until I was about 14. We were like a rebellious bunch because in my church there were a lot of homeschool kids, and my brothers and I went to public school, and so we were a little different in that way because there's cussing in public school. Maybe that kind of introduced me to a little bit of a rebellious spirit. Maybe that's also being the third child. I think that's part of that personality. My dad was a fishing captain. My mom worked at the church that I grew up in. She was admin. One thing I loved about living in Sarasota and my dad being a fishing captain was we would go fishing a lot. We'd always be on the water. We would always be in the sunshine, going to the beach whenever we possibly could. And I feel like that really instilled in me this like easygoing, kind of go with the flow, salty air, curly hair vibe. I think that's in me, and fun and loving the outdoors and wanting to be outside and be in nature. And I also got into golf at a really young age, and I ended up being really, really good at golf. With that, you're doing tournaments, you're going to these like fancy places, and I didn't really feel like I belonged there, but I liked the attention I got because I was good. And that mixed with my parents separating when I was in middle school. I was about 13 years old when they separated and then finally divorced, I think made me grow up really quickly. But the flip side to that is I went through some really emotionally intense things as a 13, 14-year-old, processing my parents' divorce and processing the emotional trauma that can come with that. For better or for worse, those situations, I think, really defined my perspective of the world. I was kind of easygoing. I always wanted to have fun because I didn't really want to deal with the emotional side of going through a divorce. And when I ended up leaving golf after my parents' divorce, there was a lot of people that were disappointed in me because they saw a lot of potential. And I just wanted to be a kid. I just wanted to have fun. I didn't want to have this like serious golf game and all of these expectations. I just wanted to enjoy my teenagehood. I feel like I grew up really fast, and part of me missed some of my childhood because I couldn't go jump on a trampoline because they were afraid that I would break my leg or something and my golf game would be ruined. And I hated that pressure. Once I decided to quit and walk away, I felt this like freedom. At the time, a really good friend of mine, we decided to go to this new church that our other friends invited us to. That really had a huge impact on me because I had grown up in the church and my mom worked there, so everybody knew who I was. And whether it was there or not, I think I felt this expectation to be that good little church girl because that's what you do. But I don't think I really knew who Jesus was and how he could influence my life. I feel like that changed the trajectory of my relationship with God. In my 10th grade year, we moved to a whole new state, and this town was even smaller than the one I grew up in. And we went to another church, and that was even smaller. I didn't ever want to go back to having like all these expectations put on me and someone forcing me to do something. And so I knew, and I felt like I had an identity in Christ. I just kind of lived my life how I wanted to, having fun, being free, doing what I wanted. I'm grateful for all of the people that maybe saw what I couldn't see, and me trying to escape the emotional turmoil of walking through a divorce as a young teenager, and investing in me and helping me process that. Oh, I didn't know I was gonna get emotional. I didn't want to get emotional. Can you get me to touch you? Still, I don't like getting emotional, even though I cry at like everything, whatever. Some really close friends that were older than me kind of came alongside me and helped me process the things through my childhood and really deal with them in a healthy way, which I'm so grateful for. Because I feel like that gave me tools to handle things that happened as an adult and not trying to escape, but dealing with them head on. Let's process through them, and then we can go back to having fun. And I think that's how I handle a lot of things in my life, and I think that's what I've brought into my marriage with Royce. And I think it's defined how we handle things together.
So what is my culture? That is a really hard question to answer. And I think it's hard for anyone to answer, especially if you grow up in a dominant culture. It's hard to define it when you have nothing to compare it to. But I think for me, it starts in my childhood. I was born in a very small town in New Jersey, and I lived there until I was about 3 or 4. I really have no memories of that place. Only like we have some home videos that we used to watch every year, so like I feel like I remember. But I think if I was honest with myself, I really don't remember. I'm just remembering those videos. My parents got divorced when I was around, actually I don't even know how old I was. Too young to remember. They got divorced, and about a year later, my brother and my mom and I moved to Florida to live with our grandparents so my mom could go back to nursing school. I know a lot of people say that divorce is like traumatizing to them and it's really hard for them to get over, but honestly I don't remember my parents ever being together. So it was just kind of like normal life, maybe because it was just my mom and us. And then there was my grandparents. We lived with them for probably 3 years before we moved into our own house, but they were a regular part of our lives, and especially my grandpa really impacted me. We used to go to the airport to watch the planes take off because he loved planes, and then that instilled in me a love of planes. So he used to record old movies on Turner Classic Movies, and he would record them onto his VCR, his tape, and then he'd give us the tape, and we'd watch all these old movies. And to this day, my brother and I love watching old movies. We didn't have a lot, but we had everything we needed. As I grew up and started high school and started to become like my own person, I was at home a lot less. I spent a lot of time at church, a lot of time. And actually later my mom told me she asked the youth pastor of our church to kind of take me under his wing. And I really think that had a profound impact on my life. His name was Josh, and to this day, we're best friends. He was the pastor at our wedding. He has been with me through every high and low of my life since I met him, and it's really been an incredible thing. I've really seen God's grace in bringing men into my life to teach me what it is to be a man, even though my father wasn't, physically present. We talked on the phone, but that's not the same thing. And there are these men that came alongside me in different times of my life, Josh, another guy named James, and really shaped me into who I am today. And it was James who got me into surfing, one of the things I love to do most in life. I will never forget the day I had been doing some skimboarding, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, there's some waves. Do you want to learn how to surf?" I was like, yes. And it was a terrifying experience, but after that I was hooked. Then as I moved into high school, I really got into that surfing scene and doing that kind of thing. One thing I didn't say before is that my dad is black and my mom is white. And for the longest time, I didn't really think that had any impact on me. I just kind of grew up in white culture, and so I didn't really consider myself black at all. As an adult, I really didn't think that had an impact on me. But then one time, we had a babysitter. Her name was Miss Lou, and she said the first day that she met us, we came up to her and we said to her, "We're little brown boys." I don't remember saying that, but clearly being mixed or being brown was on the forefront of my mind, if that's the first thing that I say to a new babysitter. But as I grew and got older, I kind of just didn't forget about it, but I didn't think about it. Because I look white and I grew up in a white context and no one really would guess. I mean, people are like, "Oh, well, what are you?" But if I'm surrounded by white people and I'm at a beach town, everyone's tan, it's like nobody knows. But I really think it's contributed to this feeling that I have of not belonging anywhere. And I think a lot of people who are bicultural or biracial have this experience of not feeling like they belong. And I've always wanted to belong somewhere. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be part of the surfing culture. I wanted to get sponsored by the local surf shop. I wanted to, do contests and surf all the time. Or when I was doing music, I wanted to be in that music scene. I wanted to be that musician. So I was doing musical theater and singing, and I had this dream to be on Broadway. So it was like all these different areas of life that were very, very different. You don't surf and then go to Broadway at the same time, right? So it's just like all these different conflicting things that really kept me from belonging in any one place. I think one of the ways I responded to that was trying to control things. Like that everything belongs in this little box and everything needs to be neatly defined. And if I can't define myself, I can at least define the world around me and confine and shape the world around me. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And just really recently, I have realized that. One other interesting aspect that really goes into the culture of who I am is the fact that I know Spanish, but I'm not Hispanic. When I was in high school, I went to the Dominican Republic on a missions trip, and I was like, "Oh, Spanish. I should learn Spanish." And so then I essentially dedicated my life to learning Spanish. I hung out with all the Spanish-speaking kids at school. I listened to Spanish radio. I continued to go to the Dominican Republic on missions trips. And I spent a month or two there after high school teaching kids. I didn't realize this at the time. It's really become a fundamental part of who I am. And so that just maybe contributes to the sense of unbelonging, because I don't belong to the Spanish-speaking community. I'm not Latino or anything. So it's this weird mix of white and black and Spanish in there, and growing up in a beach town surfing, it's formed this strange amalgamation of a culture inside of me that I'm still figuring out what it is. That's what I bring into our marriage, the desire to have things neatly defined in boxes and for everything to have a role and a purpose, and none of this ambiguity. If I can't be white, or if I can't be black, or if I can't be Hispanic, everything else will be what it is. So maybe you heard our stories and you're like, "Oh, well, they actually have cultures that they come from." The truth is that we all have a culture. You have a culture. You may not know it because you're part of the majority culture or the dominant culture. Mm-hmm. And when people are in the dominant or majority culture, it's much harder for them to understand and notice what their culture is because they have nothing to compare it against. When you're in a minority culture, you can look at mainstream media, you can look at pretty much anything and say, "Oh, they're different from me in this way." So when you're part of a dominant culture, you just have to look a little bit harder. So you might say, "Oh, well, I just grew up in normal, household, did normal things." Well, those things are normal for you and your culture, not normal for everybody. How does that affect your marriage? How does it affect our marriage, Bekah?
Royce comes from a family culture, I would say, that is very close-knit. And I thought my family was pretty close until I married Royce. His family is really close. I actually have adopted your family.
They've adopted you.
And it's been an experience that I haven't really had before. My extended family is not super close. There are some of us that are closer than others. And his extended family is very close. And I would say that has benefited me being a part of that kind of family culture. It's something I've never experienced before, and I love it. But it was definitely something that I had to learn how to be a part of, I guess.
Yeah, like one of the things Bekah has remarked to me about is how close I am to my mom. That was
I knew Royce was close to his mom, and I was grateful for that. I really liked that aspect of him before we got married. And then after we got married, I realized how close he was to his mom. He's very close to his mom. I didn't realize how
and
deep
so
it was.
how does that culture affect our marriage? Well, one of the ways is communication. So in our household, when growing up, we were always talking all the time, always telling my mom what's going on, where I'm doing, anything like that. And Bekah is kind of like in the moment where she's at, and that's it. So I'm like waiting for a call. Like she might be on a trip somewhere, and I'm like waiting for her to call to let me know how she's doing, or like
what
just
is in front of me. What's in front of me has all of my attention.
Right. And
so sometimes I could go weeks without calling somebody,
including me.
It doesn't mean that I don't love them any less. It's just I don't think about it.
So we've had some pretty heated arguments over that, actually. Hello, remember me, your husband?
Right. Where him and his mom talk almost every day.
Right. So that's one cultural difference in our context that can cause some friction that we have to be consciously aware of and fight against. I have to remember, oh yes, Bekah loves me. She's just in the moment doing her thing. And it's okay. Another way culture affects our marriage is, I talked before about kind of being undefined in kind of whom I come from and who I am because I'm biracial and I have a lot of different culture mixes inside of me. How would you say that affects our relationship and our marriage?
What you have a hand in, you want it to be the best, and you want it to live in its place and be the best in its place. Sometimes there's no compromise on that, because if you can control it, it'll be the best. I don't always care for it to be the absolute best. I would rather just get through it and get to the fun parts and not do the hard stuff and move on. A lot of that has to do with all of your different diverse personalities in you, and my background of just not wanting to be hurt anymore or feel emotional pain and enjoy life as much as I can.
Your childhood and your family culture are like so deep in you, and some of these realizations are just like really brand new for us, and just to see how much they affect the way you interact and affect the way that you build your own family culture. These things that we're talking about are even more magnified when you have cross-cultural marriages and relationships. Like the communication style of somebody from South America is going to be far different from somebody from, say, like Western Europe, right? Western Europeans are much more reserved. South American people tend to be much more expressive, right? And so there's a lot more opportunity for conflict.
Or misunderstanding, even.
Right. I think it's helpful for us to realize that we're all in cross-cultural marriages. Some are just more cross-cultural than others. And when we consider it that way, we can lean into, and instead of being annoyed by those differences, say, okay, well, this is their culture. How can we use that to create a new family culture?
Right.
There was this study that I looked up before we did this video, and I thought it was really good, so I want to read it to you. This was a study of cross-cultural, cross-country marriages and relationships. And these are some of the conclusions that it came to. Is that self-awareness, open-mindedness, mindfulness, showing respect, self-disclosure, and faith support emerged as the most important areas of communication competence developed and used by the couples. Essential strategies for addressing conflicts constructively included changing perspectives and using open communication. And these are things that cross-cultural couples have learned and benefited from and used to improve their marriage and relationships. And you guys can use that too. You both can be white American. You both can have grown up in the same town like we did, but you still have different cultures, and you can still use strategies to improve your relationship. And a lot of that is really leaning into those tension points and being willing to be wrong or being willing to compromise. The study also went on to say that people who are in cross-cultural or intercultural marriages are willing to let their own culture change because they enjoy the benefit of personal growth and the opportunity to construct a unique identity as a couple. And they do that by blending features from the two distinct cultures. And they do this out of love for each other, and they're willing to make the personal sacrifices necessary for the marriage to flourish.
That's similar to what I was talking about with your family versus the way I see extended family and gatherings.
Right.
One thing that I've adopted of his culture into my culture, into our culture, is I reach out to my family more than I used to, which instead of once a month, it might be twice or 3 times a month, but still I was encouraged and inspired by his effort towards his family, and I wanted to have that in myself as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that has really helped me realize the way that I've dealt with my lack of solid identity in one particular culture, or me trying to define this aspect or thing, and Bekah sees it, or it like goes up against Bekah's free-flowing culture.
My wanting to be free and don't put too many expectations on me. And yeah, the history of that in my life has been a negative experience. And so when Royce tries to do that, it really creates some tension in me.
And it's helped me realize that I'm doing that, and it's helped me get to the bottom of why I'm doing that. And now it's given me a lot more freedom. So thanks.
Put her there.
We hope you've learned something about yourself that can maybe help you in your relationship, in your marriage.
Thanks so much for watching this video. Please leave a like. If you're new here, we'd love for you to subscribe and hit the little bell so you get a notification every time we post a video.
Also, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of September. If it's not September yet, you can help us get there. Hit the subscribe button, like Bekah said, and ask one of your friends to hit the subscribe button. Really helps us out.
We want to know what your culture is. What is your come from? Leave us a comment. We want to know. We want to interact with you.
Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Who's texting you?
Your mom. She's just trying to still create a Gmail
She said I
account.
just went and liked all your videos.
Speaking of
Mom.
Royce's mom, we just told her to get a Gmail account so she could like all our videos and leave comments herself.
And
She'll
she
always,
just did.
she always texts us her comments on them. But thanks, Linda.
Thanks, Mom. You're the best.